Under the Save America Act, individuals will be required to provide that proof of citizenship in order to register, and on election day, required to demonstrate voter identification.
The purpose of the SAFE Act is to ban non-citizens from voting in federal elections and also to implement some kind of voter ID law where you would have to show your driver's license when you go to cast a ballot. My name is Justin Papp. I cover politics for CNBC. So the initial version of the SAVE Act that Chip Roy introduced and Mike Lee introduced in the Senate in late January would have required some form of ID at the ballot box that proved you were an American citizen, so something like a passport, for instance. There was an amended version of the SAVE Act that was introduced over the weekend that pares that back a little bit. Some form of photo ID would still be required at the polls to vote, but the list of acceptable forms of ID is longer and could include things like state-issued IDs. Importantly, college IDs are still prohibited under this amended version, which is a concern that many Democrats have, that Republicans are specifically targeting demographic groups, including young people, that tend to vote for Democrats.
While the specific policies may have changed since the days of the Jim Crow South, the goal of the SAVE Act is the same: disenfranchising American citizens and making it harder for eligible people to vote.
More than 21 million Americans don't have ready access to documents proving that they're American citizens, and something like more than 2 million people don't have a valid form of government-issued ID. As things like voter ID have become more of a concern, particularly among Republicans, some states, mostly in the South, like North Carolina and Mississippi, have implemented voter ID laws. Non-citizens are not allowed to vote in federal elections, but there are certain territories like Washington, D.C. that allow them to vote. Elections are mostly state-run. States can decide their own laws around how they carry out elections, but constitutionally, Congress does have a role in legislating around how elections are carried out.
You know, if you think about it, a state is an agent for the federal government in elections. I don't know why the federal government doesn't do them anyway.
Trump just keeps banging this drum about the prospect of non-citizens voting, and it's sort of reached a fever pitch in the past several weeks. He's raised concerns about the security of elections and about the prospect of non-citizens voting in elections. It can happen, it does happen occasionally, but it is already illegal. And there are strict penalties for anybody who tries to vote if they're a non-citizen. Fundamentally, most Democrats do not agree with the concept of voter ID, and so it's got a very difficult path to get to President Trump's desk. The Republican majority in the Senate is slim. More than a handful of Democrats would have to join their Republican colleagues and support the bill to get it over the 60-vote filibuster threshold. My sense is they're trying to make this proposal more palatable to Democrats. There's been this massive pressure campaign from the GOP, from influencers, from people like Elon Musk, in addition to Trump himself. They continue to point to public polling, which shows that the vast majority of Americans are in support of at least the concept of voter ID, but Democrats and voting rights groups say the devil is in the details. It's about how those voting rights laws are written and who they will potentially disenfranchise.